Good afternoon and welcome to BizTech Asia Midday Market Watch. I'm Samantha Woon and here with me is Brian, my co-host. So let's start by taking a look at summary of the market action today. We have in the US for the stock market indexes stabilized in evening trading on Sunday amidst discussion about whether an assassination attempt on presidential candidate Donald Trump may influence his chances of winning. Trump was targeted at an attempt assassination during a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday. The attacker fired several shots at Trump, with one hitting him on the ear. Despite the incident, Trump encouraged the crowd to continue fighting. With ongoing uncertainty in the US political landscape, investors remain cautious, impacting their risk appetite. Along with that, investors are also waiting upon second quarter earnings starting this week. So the second quarter earnings season kicks off with major players like Goldman Sachs and BlackRock set to announce results on Monday, followed by Bank of America and Morgan Stanley on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, chipmaking giant ASML and tech titan Netflix will follow suit with its reports on Thursday. By late Sunday night, US markets futures showed slight gain, with Dow Jones Industrial Average futures up 0.11% and both S&P 500 and Nasdaq future also showing gains around 0.1%. Over in Asia, many stocks declined on Monday after China reported disappointing economic growth numbers. Uncertainty surrounding the US politics increased after the assassination attempt, and trading volumes remain low on today because there is a holiday over at the Japanese market. Over in China, the China Shanghai Shenzhen CSI 300 and the composite indexes slowed little changes during the volatile trading day, while Hong Kong Hang Seng dropped by 1.1%. China's economy expanded by 4.7 year-on-year in the second quarter, falling below expectations due to the soft consumer spending and demand, counteracting gains in industrial output and manufacturing. Retail sales number for June reinforced concerns about sluggish economic growth, elevated employment, and declining property market, prompting Chinese consumers to further reduce their expenditures. All eyes are now on the upcoming third plenum of the Chinese Communist Party, scheduled to commence later today. So this gathering of high-ranking Chinese officials will closely monitor for additional indications regarding economic stimulus. So when in Australia, we have the ASX 200 continue its upward trend for the third consecutive day, rising by 0.79% to reach a new all-time peak. And Australian market, as the sole major Asian benchmark, is in its positive territory. Yeah, over in India, the Nifty 50 is up 0.77%. In Singapore, the STI is down 0.04%. In Malaysia, the KLCI is up 0.24%. Over in Japan, as you mentioned earlier, markets remain closed for a public holiday. In South Korea, the Kospi Index experienced a 0.11 drop, while the small cap Kosdaq slipped 0.24%. Brian, over to you.
Now, to give us insights on markets and developments over the weekend, we have Kay Van Petersen. He's the principal and part of the executive team at HODL Group, Ascent Capital, and Final Upgrade. Kay, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Great to be on. Happy Monday, everybody.
Now, happy Monday. Well, not so happy over the weekend. We had the Trump assassination attempt. How is that going to impact the 2024 elections?
Yeah, so, this is like the sweet spot for my background because I'm a special sits event-driven guy who also has an intersection with macro. So I think there's a lot to unpack, but just focusing first on the US elections, from my perspective, coming into the weekend, there's always the uncertainty, right, around the big US elections, which were in November. that was already being steered given the Biden-Trump debate, where a lot of people who were hardcore Biden supporters kind of were starting to, freak out of the need of changing the Democratic potential nominee for this elections. And then, of course, we get the assassination attempt, over the weekend, I think early doors, Sunday, Asia time. I think from my perspective, what it does to the market is it takes out a lot of uncertainty. I think Trump's lead post this will become untenable. He's, pretty much going to be the, anti-fragile version of the Teflon Don in every kind of which way. So from my perspective, the probability of him losing is very, very, very low. Of course, assuming that he stays in good health and there's nothing else happens between now and November. And I think the market likes that, regardless of who is coming in. The market wants less uncertainty and more certainty. And Trump, whether you like him or not, is viewed as pro-business, pro-crypto, pro-America, and a lot of the things that I think the market is looking for and has been frustrated with the current administration.
Now, and that certainly resonates with my thoughts, Kay, especially around the fact that business has now just sort of just gone behind Trump. And what's really going to happen is, as you said, the uncertainty around it is taken out of the markets. So, and again, all business people, investors want certainty. Now, how is that going to play out from a foreign policy perspective? Because that's where perhaps there's less certainty.
No, I totally agree. So I think, again, you probably have a bucket of high probability pathways and then another bucket of lower probability pathways. So let's take the high probability pathways. If you look at what are the major divergences between this current Biden-Kamala administration and the previous Trump one, a big one was on foreign policy, where Trump was the first sitting president in a long time, basically, to not actually have more U.S. encroachment in foreign territory, more armed kind of conflict, and was actually very adamant, because his whole point is, why are we spending trillions of dollars of taxpayer money that's unaudited? There's no transparency when we have so many issues at home. And it's, of course, a very valid point that resonates with both people in both the Democratic camp, but as well as the Republican kind of camp, right? So it's a universal kind of theme that everyone can kind of follow. So that, I think, is the highest probability thing that you can expect. So conflicts such as the Ukraine, NATO, Russia conflict, I expect, the peaks of the volatility there are behind us. We can see a big dampening of that. We could see a relationship statement of Iran. Trump was a lot more harsh on Iran than the Biden administration has. So there could be a reversal there. We could see more positive relationships between, let's say, the U.S. and places like Argentina, places like El Salvador, which have had more maverick leaders as a whole. I think for us out here in Asia, it's a little bit more of a roll of the dice. He was the hard man for China versus trade. I'm not quite sure how that plays out. It's hard to see him, say, reversing that or changing the stance on that. He earned a lot of brownie points doing that. But I think trade, you can imagine, potentially has a chance of being shaken up. And these, I think, some of the things that you can say, at least from a foreign perspective. Internally, the border is going to be a big thing, right? In regards to immigrants coming in and out of the U.S. So I can imagine that would be one of the top things also on the domestic agenda.
Okay, you released an article over the weekend. How do you expect markets to be reacting to what just happened with Trump, with the shootings and all that? What do you expect markets to do?
Yeah, so these are top of mind thoughts, and it's always dangerous putting these out because you're completely working on incomplete information, right? I think it's going to be net very bullish. It is a bit of a tricky time of the year. It's the summer in the northern hemisphere, as we're saying. There's holidays, there's low volume. But I feel that the market's going to take this very bullishly for U.S. equities. I could even see a scenario where we get a stronger U.S. dollar, where we get even, lower U.S. rates because there's money moving into the U.S., right? So I'm very bullish on that perspective. We, of course, need to see this play out over the next few days and weeks. For crypto in particular, which has been in the doldrums, this could maybe mark the floor that it's been trying to make over the summer. We are up relatively strongly since the news because it was one of the only few markets that people could actually get into or get some kind of exposure. And I think, then you'll start to see a lot of the things that maybe were favored by the previous administration, maybe disfavored. Defense names could come under pressure. I think this new administration, if Trump does come in, could be very favorable for the likes of Tesla, which was shunned by the Biden administration. So there's a few kind of more niche pockets, but net, it should be very positive for risk assets.
Okay, then, we take a step back and we take a very much broader view. Globally, how is this going to impact markets?
Yeah, so I think globally, it's very easy to kind of like sit and, you just need to get on X and see the visceral behind a Biden tweet or a Trump tweet and go into the comments. I mean, this is the power of decentralization. You get the best of the best and you get the absolute worst of the worst, right? But I think what's happening in the US in regards to polarization, in regards to people literally taking matters like this into their own hands, right, to try and assassinate someone who's running to be president, I think this is unfortunately going to become a much more common story, because the factors that are in the US are factors that are happening everywhere. They're happening in Europe, they're happening in Australia, they're happening in New Zealand. You could even make an argument that we're starting to see some cracks in even places like Singapore, Hong Kong, and so on, right? And this is the breaking of the social contract, i.e., I can work hard, I can pay my taxes, and I can still do well, is becoming, farther and farther untenable in a lot of places kind of globally. And the challenge here is net society loses. These are not things you can solve easily overnight, right? And I think that's something that people should take a hard look and a hard step back on this and see, okay, how do we get to a more sustainable society where we can agree to disagree, but still net be moving, positively in a sustainable kind of direction. And, that I think is something that anyone who's serious about policy, anyone who's serious about leadership, rather than pointing out the problems, can try and create or be part of kind of the solution.
Okay, Kay, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me, guys.
We have Kay Van Petersen, KVP, a principal part of the executive team at the HODL Group, Ascent Capital, and Final Upgrade. This has been BizTech Asia Midday Market Watch, and be sure to keep informed on the latest market updates weekdays at 1 p.m. I'm Samantha Boone.
And I'm Brian Fernandez.
And this video and podcast will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, and our social media platforms. It will also be on our syndication partners' TV stations, radio stations, and website. Remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.